This podcast is for people who know that the workplace can and should be better and are ready to do something about it. You will learn practical ways to change organizational cultures and human behavior without buzzwords, without box ticking, without performative leadership. I am the boss of Prina Shah Consulting, working with executives, leaders, and teams to create work cultures and environments that actually work for people. I am Prina Shah. I specialize in organizational culture change and human behavior change. I am all about making work better with people who give a damn. So if you think I can help, contact me via LinkedIn. I am here to help you to find decent ways to change the workplace. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ways to Change Your Workplace podcast. And this is a podcast for my guest, Digby Scott's podcast, which is called Dig Deeper. We're sharing the love. We're cross-pollinating here, Digby. Hello, how are you?
Nice to see you, Prina. Yep, I'm good. I'm excited.
Same.
I love this idea of let's get two podcasts in one.
Two birds, one stone and all that, right?
You got it. Exactly.
Now, Digby, I'm actually very, very genuinely excited to speak with you because you come highly recommended by someone who I highly respect. So if I may share our connection. So long ago, I worked with an amazing manager who completely changed my career. I will say that to this day. And I hold on to him like he is a mentor of mine, Mr. James Miller, who I understand you used to work with years and years and years ago when you were in Perth.
We had a business together called the Catalyst Group. There was three of us. So James, Jesse Lamond and me. Yeah. And I think you're right about James. He just has this sort of still wisdom that is infectious to be around, and not in a really charismatic, like in your face way, but in this kind of really grounded, pretty quiet way. And I remember the questions he would ask. He would just stop you in your tracks. What do you reckon it was about James that you say he was this incredible manager? What do you reckon he did for you?
Oh, it's so much. So he got me to think bigger by asking those questions. It wouldn't be just the why question. He'd sit, he'd ponder, then he'd just expand, from a questioning perspective. He's brilliant on a podcast, is he not? Because he's such a big thinker. And then the other thing is, beyond work, I'll be very honest, he opened me up to practical philosophy. So back in the day, when he was my manager, he was going to the School of Philosophy in Western Australia. I was like, what is this stuff? I need a little bit more in my life. Digby, I've studied sociology and social psychology, so I'm just constantly always learning and just observing society in the way of the workplace. And James went to this thing called the School of Philosophy. So I became a student. So I was a student, I would have to say, Digby, for years and years and years. And as a human, I have developed and learned so much from that. And that's thanks to the gift of James.
Yeah, he's also not afraid to go his own way, right? So the School of Philosophy, I mean, that's not kind of like your MBA.
No.
It should be. They used to have a program here at Curtin University in Perth called the Masters of Leadership and Management, and included papers on philosophy. And I think that we need more of that in our thinking. It's interesting. My youngest son, he's 19, he's doing second year university in Dunedin at Otago University, and he is doing a degree in neuroscience and philosophy. He's kind of doing this kind of hybrid-y thing. And I said, why are you doing that? Why those kind of angles? And he goes, well, they're both trying to answer the same question from different angles. It's like,
I love that.
Yeah, that is wise for a 19-year-old, right?
Come on. Yeah. We need him on our podcast. Has he been on yours?
He'd be good. Not yet, but James has, right? So we'll put a link in the show notes to James's conversation with me. And deep thinker about what it makes to make a workplace meaningful. Right? So
exactly right.
Connection to your work.
So he speaks my
both
language.
of our work.
Yeah.
We're both interested also in this idea of legacy and impact and what it takes to create that. And interesting, you led off with James as you think about the impact that he's had on you. This would be 20 years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Now you still speak of him like it was yesterday. The impact that it's had. So when we think about impact and legacy, what do we mean? What's how do you define that? Because you're speaking of it. How do you define that?
I love this. I love this. Okay. So I have a whole chapter on it in my book, which is called Make Work Meaningful, How to Create a Culture That Leaves a Legacy. Now, Digby, we are very much taught that when you go into a workplace, you've got your vision, you've got your mission, you've got your values, you've got your performance and development plan. It's the system that we have. But then one of the things that I've really seen, and I don't know if you come across this a lot as well, is I'm working with executives often at the apex of their game, of their career.
Mm.
And there's something missing from a heart perspective, generally speaking, not with everyone, but with the ones I've really seen. I've tried to tap into this thing. What is it that's missing? Like, yeah, you've achieved all of your successes, you've achieved brilliant, brilliant things, but there's a but, you know? There's still something missing, that intangible thing that's missing. So that's what I'm trying to tap into. So the first section of my book actually focuses on legacy and the legacy that you want to leave in the workplace. And now when I talk about this, when I wrote about this as well, you know, I've briefed a million people. When you write a book, it's like, I was
Hmm.
all in on this. The word legacy really makes people panic, thinking, but I'm not at the end of my career yet. I'm not dead yet. To which I say, well, can we just reframe that whole thinking as a
Yeah.
consideration? You can leave a legacy every frigging day. If
Every
you're a
minute.
graduate, if you're a leader, if you're an executive, you know, if you're a change manager, whatever you are, you do you, but what is that you in terms of the legacy that you want to leave? It could be a legacy for this project. It could be a legacy for this team. I spoke at an event. I did a keynote speech last week, in fact, it was. And, you know, I did this legacy activity with the audience. It was a bit interactive. And people had different responses. So, all within the same industry, okay? One person said, I want to leave a good succession plan for whoever takes over this work that I take great pride in. Another person said, I want to make this industry even better. And then another person said, I want to do stuff for my organizational culture, which will leave it better than when I started. So every single one of us has a different driver beyond your vision, mission, values, blah, 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 blah. We can copy and paste them to most organizations, I would say. But that legacy thing and the thing that's you, that's the agency that you do have. So what is it that you have?
Why does it matter? Like, why do we even need to think about the idea of legacy? Because I think
Ah,
mission, purpose, values, etc. Yes, get that. Why do
yeah.
we need to even bother? Because
Okay.
maybe another way of asking the question
Go on. I love this.
is how do your decisions change day to day when you're thinking about lasting impact, when you're thinking about legacy
Okay.
versus if you don't have that?
Okay. Well, let me answer. Why does it matter? So,
Mm.
spoiler alert, we are going to be working for a long, 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 long time yet. Are we not? So, we can be that robot and just, you know, play the system, or we can create the system ourselves. That's
Mm.
one thing. And then the other aspect of your question was, remind me, why does
Oh,
it?
it's
And then,
how do your decisions change day to day if you're
yeah.
thinking about the longer term impact
Okay.
of what you're doing?
Okay, so if you think about that, the leader who spoke at the conference I was at last week, who says, I want, you know, to create a beautiful succession plan that leaves my work in good hands. His decision making would be completely along those lines. Like, okay, so if I make this decision, it will either enable or disable Digby to be my successor or to do the right stuff. You know, so I call it your North Star. You know, some people call it your purpose, that kind of thing. But purpose, I think, has been overdone. Thank you, Simon Sinek. I think legacy it's this big scary thing which can change throughout our phases of careers, Digby. So, you know, when I was a baby grad, my legacy would have been to, learn and give back. So it's about serving. Um,
Yeah.
my legacy now that I've learned a heap of stuff, you know, the best of stuff is to make work better for everybody. So it evolves as we evolve as humans, you know?
I like that. There's a term in sport which is you go where you look.
Ooh,
And, it's like I surf, and if wherever I turn my head to look is where my body will follow. So if I'm looking at the part of the wave that's going to smash me, I'll probably go there. But if I'm looking at the part of the wave that I can ride without getting nailed,
yeah.
then I'm more likely to make it. And there's something I love about this idea of you're looking at impact, at the lasting impact, and you're looking, actually, this is what matters. Then I reckon you make decisions that are in service of that, as
Yep.
opposed to in service of, say, short term looking good or being the hero or whatever it might be. So I
Yep.
think there's something about, to me, that's a forcing function about where you decide to put your attention. That makes
Definitely
sense?
so. I
Yeah.
definitely see. So, going back to the executives that I talk about who are or were feeling that funk, it's because they hadn't worked on that thing yet, compared to
Mm.
the executives who are happier, at the stage of their career that they're in. They've worked on their stuff and they've worked on, okay, well,
Mm.
I don't necessarily need to be the CFO. However, if I do blah, 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 this is what's going to fulfill me.
Yeah,
And as a
exactly.
result, perhaps you get to, the heights of your career. Maybe we reverse this altogether. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I like that. I'm at a stage in my career where I'm comfortable with my how I show up day to day, and I know I'm good at what I do, and I reckon a lot of people listening will be in this boat. It's like, I've got my my technical chops down, and I know how to do what I do,
Yes.
and it's like the question, for what and over what time period. I'm starting to ask more questions like that. So it's it's more moments. Like, I had a moment years ago, and where I was accosted is too strong a word, but I was in Melbourne, and this lady came up to me on the street and she said, "Digby Scott,
Ooh,
thanks for being amazing 25 years ago." Like, what is she? What is the context for this? My mind's going everywhere. And she said, "I know you were a trainer for me on this graduate training course I was a
oh,
participant on, and you really rocked my world in terms you open up my world to what's possible." I was an accountant, and she goes, "And now I'm a partner of this firm, and I've made this my career, and you gave
wow.
me a great start." And there was that lovely long sort of ripple effect over 25 years that I had no idea.
Right?
And it's funny because there's kind of like a paradox. You might not even know what your impact is,
No.
but you need, I think it's important to have an intent to have it, because otherwise, yeah, I think like you say, it becomes a little hollow. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm doing this stuff, but for what? And I love the idea of plant a seed for a tree that you'll never sit under. And
Yes.
if you can live in that way, I think there's something about, well, you focus on nurturing, you focus on building capability. You don't focus on just fighting fires the whole time, and
No.
there's something about that which I think just at the end of the day, humans want that,
Oh,
that sense of,
completely.
yeah.
Yeah, and it is shifting from ambition to meaning. We are all ambitious creatures, absolutely. So at certain parts of our
Mm,
career, I am sure, right? But that can only get us so far. Oh, we have to do this with people. It's a collective thing. It's not a solo thing as well. So in terms of defining your legacy goal, I've got a bit of an acronym. So the longevity aspect of it. How will my decisions contribute to the lasting positive impact of what
yes,
I'm doing?
yes.
And then the E, so essence stands for, or E stands for essence. How can I ensure my leadership reflects my authentic self? And then
Mm,
G, genuine. How are my intentions and decisions consistently genuine? That's your check. And then A, awareness. How does my understanding of time's finite nature shape my choices? C, consequences. What are the long-term consequences of my decisions? Okay. And then why, yearning. What do I yearn to transform? And that's the thing
beautiful.
that people haven't been challenged with or questioned, because often, I mean, I've got the case study. I won't tell you who it's about. It's a bad case study, but it's a really good bad case study, right? This person was recruited to bring about efficiencies within the workplace, and they did so, but they didn't consider the bigger picture. And then they got the worst reputation ever within the workplace. So we do this because someone else has told us to, rather than being the James, critically thinking, why, what, well, how can I help with this? What would my version of this be? Right? Rather than being that puppet. So I ask people, are you the driver of your career or the passenger? Two
Yeah,
different things there.
yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you got to be the passenger,
Yes.
You've got to allow things to unfold, right? And you can't necessarily control it all. But if you're only the
100%.
passenger, then you are really subject to the forces at play.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. I love your acronym. That's really cool. That's
Thank you.
they all tap a different part of wisdom. Yeah, there's nothing small about any of those letters.
They're huge, huge questions. I've got a
Yeah.
question for you. So, I've been listening into your podcast, and one of the things you talk about is energy and energy
Mm.
management, right? So, I talk about this at length in my workshops. And initially, it sounds a bit woo-woo, to some people because they're still not into this kind of talking or this kind of consideration of managing your energy. What is energy management to you? I won't tell you what
Okay.
my perception is.
So let's get both big picture and practical. So
Yeah.
Einstein said, energy is all there is. There is nothing else. Paraphrasing. And he's right. I mean, everything is energy.
Yeah.
And so, okay, well, let's not work against that. Let's work with that. Right?
Yeah.
If everything is energy, well, why don't we tap it? That's the big picture stuff. The practical stuff is, are you going to be more effective when you're energized or when you're depleted? I mean, it's a pretty
Right.
obvious answer, right? And so paying attention to energy is fundamental, particularly when you're in a leadership role, because
Yeah.
people are looking. Your words have weight,
Yes.
and therefore your energy has weight. I know for me that when I'm not necessarily fizzing with extroversion, but I'm bringing a certain sort of presence
Mhm.
that I just know that it's going to carry more in the conversations I have, the ripple effect that happens as a result. And so if I focus on, here's the guts of it. If I focus on manage my energy as a priority as opposed to managing my time, then I am more likely to be able to create what I want to create in the world. Today, for example, so I had 2 meetings with potential new organizational clients today, both in person, which required me to show up, look good, be present, have a half intelligent conversation. Well, a very intelligent conversation.
Yes.
and and I prepared for that. So I didn't rush around beforehand trying to get a million things done.
Aha.
I gave myself some space. I arrived 10, 15 minutes early before, found a good place to sit, and we met in a hotel lobby for the first one. And just, that does sound hippie, but got in the zone, right? Just kind of presence. And it's those little practices that I think allow us to be present, bring the energy that's required. Because when we have energy, I've used the word presence a few times, Prina, so it's
Yeah.
like, I think they are interchangeable. When you're present, then you can respond more adeptly to
Yeah.
what happens in the conversation. So it's just all about that. That's what when I think of energy, that's what I think about. I'm
Now I
not
love
thinking
that.
purple flowing robes and, let's
No,
go om in a circle and stuff.
no, no. Although
Yeah.
an om is a good thing as well. It's
Yeah,
very,
sorry. Right.
very
Yeah, yeah.
healing.
Yeah, yeah.
But and now that you've answered this question in a beautiful way. I feel as a facilitator or as a consultant, right? So now if we bring ourselves into the workplace, so you've talked about being prepared for that conversation, giving myself some space. I got in the zone. I have little practices. If I'm a
Hmm.
manager within the workplace, I was saying, yeah, yeah, blah to all of this because of the fact that my diary is back to back to back to back to back with those meetings, meetings, meetings. You
Mm-hmm.
can say all of this, but what about me? How do we make this practical for people who are within the workplace, who are battling with their diaries, or battling with people above them and trying to advocate for people beneath them as well? That meat in the middle of the sandwich.
So how do you do that? I reckon there's 2 things you want to practice. One is know your outcome. So
Yeah,
for every interaction, be really clear on what your outcome was and define that as a thing you want to create, something that's positive, rather than I don't want this bad thing to happen. Well, okay, what's the opposite of that? So
yeah,
what's the thing I want to have happen? I want them to agree with me. I want to hear their perspective. I want to get my point across, whatever it might be, in a way that they hear me. So
right.
define your outcome. So that's number one. Number two, I was like, the back to back to back. there's something about creating the tiniest circuit breaker between those things.
Yeah.
So I do a thing called the door framing exercise. Now, when you're in a physical office location, it might be physically walking through the door into your next meeting.
Ooh.
If you're in a virtual environment, it's the door into the portal of Teams or Zoom or whatever it might be.
Okay.
And it's before you go in to that room, either physically or virtually, have an intent for how do I want to be and what is my outcome. So be clear on, I want to be calm, I want to be focused. And your outcome might be whatever I said, the outcome could be. Be defined on that. And as you walk through the door, just say that to yourself.
Yes.
I want to be heard, or I want to hear them, and I'm going to be present. Go. And I think it's just what did that take me 5 seconds to say?
Nothing. Yeah.
If you have that discipline, if you have that practice, then you can do 8 back-to-backs. You might be whacked by the end of it, but you will have given yourself the best chance of getting the outcome you want and staying present because you know what you want rather than just the swirling around. So there are a couple of really practical things. I mean, I'd love to say don't have back-to-backs, but the reality is it happens.
In an ideal world. Absolutely so.
Do you want to build on that? What do you do?
Yeah.
What do you see that works?
Well, that for myself, I was that manager, which is why I'm asking. So I managed many HR teams, stressy teams, and it's quite firefighting as well. So for myself, I used to do things like I had to have a lunch break and get the hell out first off and walk. Because if
Energy
I was
management, right there.
Right? Energy management 101. I need to get the hell out and just get fresh air during my lunch break and just no people at that time. Like I didn't want to talk with anyone because I knew my whole day would be talking. Right? So I needed some thinking time and just some nature time. The other thing I used to do as well is I had a post-it, simple post-it with I just drew it a symbol of a pause button just to remind me. And that just took seconds, right? In between meetings, I'd come back to my desk, I'd look at that, I was like, okay, Prina.
Yeah.
The other thing that's always my friend is drinking lots, because when someone's talking, I can
Water,
drink.
you're talking about, right?
This one, yep. Someone's talking and I'm drinking, so I can shush and not, interject as well, like you're just doing. The other big thing for me as well is because I have so many ideas and I can get very excited is I will take notes. I am a note taker. That keeps me present. I love that you mentioned being present as well, managing my energy in that respect. I had to be present for all of those conversations because they were really frigging important conversations. I couldn't drop the ball either. Pen and paper, my friends, for my brain. So I guess for each one of us is working out what energizes you, what depletes you, and ideally trying not to rely on caffeine too much. That's the other thing. I cut out all coffee, tea, everything because that was stimulating me.
I was going to say, how did that make a difference?
Okay. Oh, so I was a tea drinker, so strong Indian chai was my thing, and I had to have it. Otherwise, I was just limp and just a zombie. But I realized I was reliant on it. It was a stimulant for me. So when I went off it, I had withdrawal symptoms like I could not believe. So just grumpiness in the morning, just, foggy headedness, that kind of stuff. But then I found another thing. So herbal teas are my thing now, or water is my thing now, right? So I've got another thing. But what that enabled me to do is to get back to this energy source level, my own, rather than the stimulants one.
Like it.
Because I found in the afternoon, I would just have a cuppa and then I'd have a cup of tea or whatever, but I'd be buzzing at night, and that would just make me crappy for the morning after because I won't sleep well. So I've seen a lot of people who either rely on, caffeine or sugar a lot as well, those sugar highs in the afternoon. So, I'm really getting practical here. But yeah, I tried not to. An apple a day was my thing and still is my thing. That's my sugar high.
I love that. I love that you've got such disciplined but really simple practices.
It's doable.
Yeah. Another one, I love how I think Outlook does this. I use Google Calendar, but the default meeting time is 25 minutes or 50 minutes rather than half an hour or 60. And just that little forced space between meetings. And linking to that, I love this saying, leave the room with nothing to do.
Ooh,
meaning that if you can use that 5 or 10 minutes after you're done to action any things that you have come out of that conversation, that meeting, and you can do them there and then. What it does, and I try and do as much as I can, is it frees up mental bandwidth because
Yeah.
I don't have to carry that around as a thing to do in the future. I've just done it. And it's more
Yes.
likely to be fresh. I can just do it then. It's easier. And so that those little spaces between, there's the before coming in, like, okay, door framing, and then there's the
Mhm.
after, the action taking. You can just do the smallest little thing that I think frees your headspace up for whatever's coming next. And again, you can stay present. It's interesting how we've gone from the big ideas of lasting impact to this kind of minutiae, isn't it? Like,
I know.
okay, how do you run your days?
I know. I know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how you run your days is how you run your life. So, it makes sense to go here. Hey.
That's it. Absolutely. So, because I've seen many a team rely on the leader too much. And then that leader is the constant person. And we create a codependency then as well, which is a very unhealthy codependency on the leader. And then the leader feels that they can never break or stop, as
Oh,
well. It's just this vicious cycle. Have you come across it yourself?
I have come at you looking at my face. So I'm remembering a time I was national manager for a recruitment company and it's in New Zealand.
Okay.
And I took a break from work. It was full on. And I was, the boss, the big boss. And I went away snowboarding for, I can't remember, it was a long weekend, it was a week or something. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to be out of contact for this whole time, right?
Good.
And I did tell someone at the office, like, this is where I'm going to be, but I don't want to be contacted. And I remember getting to the top of one of the chairlifts, and the lifty came out, and they kind of like they got their cabins there. He said, "Oh, are you Digby Scott?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, a message for you. Can you go and call the office immediately?
Oh,
There's an emergency." And my heart sank into my guts. It's just
yeah.
like, how did they track me down? How do they even know who I was in the lift? So, but they tracked me down, and I remember that feeling of just really resenting myself for getting myself in this position where I was the one that they needed to solve a problem. How the hell did I get there?
Mm.
And it really put a dampener on the whole holiday, as you can imagine.
Yes.
And I just felt the weight of the world come down on me again, trying to get away from it. But at the end of the day, I had some choices. I could have set things up really differently. I could have been really clear on delegations. This is your responsibility, your delegation. Whatever happens, I'll back you, that kind of thing. But I
Yeah.
didn't do that. I was woolly about that, and I didn't create any sense of clarity about
Okay.
things. So I was like, well, Digby's the guy who's going to solve this. And at the end of the day, there's a little bit of ego at play, I
Yeah.
reckon, looking at it from a distance now. But I suspect there's a lot of people who are in similar situations. They become the go-to. But
Yes.
tell me what you see in leaders that stops us from being able to be the one who's not, what I'm trying to say, the one
Yeah.
when we get too dependent on a leader.
Yeah.
What is happening there that creates that, do you think?
So much. Okay. Okay. Where do we begin? So, okay, when you were talking, I had an aha moment. Service as, servant leadership, that kind of stuff. I think it's a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
depending on
Yes.
how you define service. So you were, your example, that was servant leadership at its worst. You were there on holiday.
Yes.
Thanks. You're on holiday, still serving the
Yes.
company. Good one there.
Mm.
Versus servant leadership of, I know my boundaries, the healthy aspect
Mm-hmm.
of working. So there's that as an aspect. Then the other thing as well, definitely an ego thing. And I've been there, done that myself as well, especially when I was climbing the ladder more so like, yes, everyone wants to come to me. You feel a great sense of inflated ego. But then you come back to a whole heap of work, which is really frigging dangerous for you and, can lead to burnout and has for many a person as well. But from a systemic perspective, organizations are working in a very, very lean manner. So we've only got the one Digby and we've only got the one Prina. Okay,
Mm,
so that's all new now, which it's a bit dangerous from a risk management perspective of an organization as well if we're relying just on
absolutely.
these people. Because if these people get knocked over by a bus, then good luck, mate. All of this tacit knowledge that's in our head is just going to go. So then the other thing I started to do, because I was that leader myself as well, was to try and upskill my team. And I'm very mindful that, people are at different capability levels, all of that kind of stuff. So baby steps in that respect as well. So I tried to be more solutions focused with my people. Like, yeah, HR, come to me with a problem. And they would come to me with every freaking problem. Say, stop. Come to me with a problem now. Tell me why it's a problem. What are the risks about this? What are the consequences of this? What are your ideas on how to address this? And are there any budgetary implications as well? So as soon as I started to push back to my team to say, yeah, come to me with an issue, but think about it first, and let's
Yeah,
have a different
absolutely.
conversation, things completely changed. And then I wasn't that bottleneck, Digby. I wasn't that, the bottleneck of, oh God, let me have a think about this and sit on it for a week or 2 weeks while, this fire is burning, for example, work fire. Instead, that person had the idea anyway. I mean, you talked about it before. People know the answers often. You know it within yourselves. So why not just use our people in that respect anyway and just listen to them, but give them the
Oh,
kind of tools and give them the permission to say, hey, Prina, I actually think we messed up here, but this is a better way of doing it. And this is how much it's going to cost. May I please have your approval? Boom.
yeah, yeah. And even with the cost thing, I mean, at some point you can go, well, depending on your context, the organization you're in, you've got delegation to, anything spend on X thousand dollars or whatever it might be. It
Exactly.
came up as you're talking. So one is you said upskill one team, which I totally agree with. That's the gateway to everything. What about if you could upskill your team to upskill themselves? As in, you
Ah,
help them to be set up a learning system that you don't even need to drive.
yeah.
You're not the go-to for the coaching either. They can coach each other. And it reminds me of an
Yes.
article from, was it Linda Hill? She wrote in Harvard Business Review a long time ago called Becoming the Boss.
Okay.
And he talked about these 4 myths of being a manager. And one of them was that there's this myth that the key relationship that a manager needs to be focused on is the one-on-one relationship between them and each of their team members.
Yeah.
And she said it's a myth. We need to focus is on cultivating relationships between team members. And so they become this sort of hyper resilient, anti
Ah,
fragile group that becomes a learning, like a learning microcosm of itself, and it's rather than you being the one who's the coach.
yeah.
And I thought that's cool. There's leverage in that. So this idea of um, your primary focus should be on creating a learning system
Yes.
rather than you being the learning catalyst or the
Yeah.
learning coach. So that was one thing that came up. And the other one is what gets in the way. I reckon we reward heroic leadership. I
Oh, don't
reckon
we?
don't we give out awards to most effective leader, or I mean I'm going to some awards night in Auckland in a couple of weeks time where there's going to be all these awards given, and I'm like, I'm going to be listening for the story about the award, because if it's about how amazing this individual is for everything that their expertise or whatever, I think, that's reinforcing a stereotype. But what if it's, hey, this person was instrumental in creating the conditions for their team to do incredible work.
Yeah.
Now, that's a different story. And I think we want to reward teams more than we reward individuals.
Yes.
And there's a different quality of thinking and discipline that goes with that. By the way, you can probably hear a cat in the background.
Huh.
So, but the cat agrees. The cat's agreeing.
Cats agree. Exactly. Wise cat. This is
Yeah.
great. So create a learning catalyst for the team. I've got an example. So when I was working in HR with one generalist HR team, it
Mm.
was big. There was all sorts of stuff happening constantly, and I couldn't have one-to-ones with everyone regularly, but my people really needed me. So Monday morning, we'd have a work in progress meeting. We'd bash out what we're working on, what we're finding really difficult, what we need help with, anything that they need help from me and anything that we need to report to the top before, things hit the
Oh,
fan. But because of that conversation, it was, time constraints are a really good thing as well. So, okay, team, let's bang this out. What's happening? Blah, 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 blah. We all got into the cadence of it. Then you would see John helping Chris out and Chris helping
yes.
Amy out and say, hey, we actually did that in my other organization. Well, I actually don't have capacity this morning, so let me pick that up for you. So rather than me being that conduit for everything getting done, they were just getting shit done themselves.
That's
That
it.
was something else. But that was a result of them being open and honest and vulnerable and really sharing what they needed help with, and me breaking the culture of that achievement focus of what are we winning, what are we doing, and clapping for, the highest achieving person.
That's a really good one. What do you reckon it takes for a leader to get out of their own way in terms of their ego and need to be seen to be driving results or looking good? Because
Yeah.
I see this all the time. It's like, well, I need to be the one who's in the trenches with them. And
Yeah.
I tend to, I get it, but I reckon there's a big limitation with that as well. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I would say yes and no. No, absolutely be there for your people, advocate for your people.
Mm,
But if you've got brilliant people who are working for you, why not just trust them and let them do the thing? And you step back. So stepping back as well, from a leadership perspective, none of us have been trained in, taking our foot off the leadership pedal. That's just anti anything leadership development, generally speaking. So for you to inform someone of that, one of the things I talk about is the golden rule of working. Ideally, the golden rule of working is you only work, in my opinion, if you're a leader, at 70% capacity, because
yeah, I agree.
30%, you're going to be attending to the things that are hitting the fan.
Yep.
When I say that to leaders, they're like, yeah, dream on, Prina. Ha, 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 ha. It's like, well, imagine if you did have that 30% free, so you could attend to those fires. You could have that critical conversation, or you could go and celebrate someone's, brilliant hard work for what they haven't achieved yet, but you're motivating them to do it now. So I
I
think
love
it's
it.
really revisiting the way we work. And who is it? Malcolm Gladwell. Is it Malcolm? No, Seth. I've got his book.
Godin, Seth Godin.
Seth Godin. Seth Godin.
Mm.
He talks about the fact that work is not working. So if we really look at that fact and look at it from our own individual perspectives, why don't we look at what isn't working for us right now, and then try and just redo the system in that respect? That's an option.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, hear a lot of people talk about, I've been in meetings all day. When am I going to get my real work done?
Yeah.
And there's something about redefining work. And if work can also involve space to
Yes.
reflect, to respond,
Thank
to
you.
stand back and see the system, not just the
Yeah.
detail, then, there's something really powerful about that. But I think we have some cultural issues around that because to redefine work, maybe I can, but if
Yeah.
the culture I'm in doesn't value that sort of work,
Yes.
then it's going to be pretty hard for me to do it. So it starts from the top
It
because,
does.
culture gets set from the top. So to be able to go give permission explicitly for reflection time, it's actually with one of the meetings I had today.
Yeah.
We're just talking about that. We tried to roll out this program where we were getting leaders to be coaches, et cetera, et cetera. But then we went, yeah, but all the people we trained are already at 100% capacity. They had no chance to do any of this. So it's got to be set from the top. Okay, you have capacity to do this. This is now part of your job description. By the way, cattail in
All good.
the
All good.
this is
Well,
next.
I have something that I'm trying to do, which I have been doing for a while now. So I applied this myself, self-coaching. Okay. Friday afternoon, 30 minutes. I have a journal now. So I'll put links into the show notes. So I've got a freebie if you want to do a freebie, or I've got a journal because I like writing. So I do this every week, Friday afternoon. What am I learning this week? Dump it down. How am I right now? How has my week been? Dump it down. What were my wins this week and what has felt like success? We tend to jump away from success and our wins because we're on to the next thing, on to the next
Mm-hmm,
thing. And that,
mm-hmm.
was completely me in my corporate days. We also have crap in the week. So, what were my challenges and triggers this week? And what can I do to mitigate them? Hello, this is the mirror, mirror on the wall, just for 5 minutes, even.
Beautiful.
But then What do I want to be held accountable for next week? And then that goes into my to-do list. But I can really bullshit myself, Digby. I can say, yes, everything is great, but often it's not, right? So digging deeper. Do you like that? Digging deeper. What needs planning? What important things have no action steps attached to them? Do I need help? Do I need to delegate? Who do I need to engage with to make this happen? What's stopping me? How am I going to celebrate once I achieve what I need to? Half an hour.
That's great. That's a
We
lot of
don't need
questions.
someone's permission, really.
No, that's great. A little practice. What do you reckon if you had to pick one or two of those questions as the go-tos that made the biggest difference? What would you say they are?
Oh my gosh, for me personally, what were my wins this week and what has felt like success? I'm quite speedy. I just move on. I need to stop. That helps me to stop.
I love
And
that.
then the last one, what actually needs planning? What important things have no action steps attached to them? That's a Prina, be accountable question, or anyone who's doing this, be accountable question.
That is, I've never heard that question before. Like, what important things have no action steps attached to them? That's great, because otherwise it's just an intention rather than an action. That's really cool. I love that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome.
So it can be done. Yeah. Is there anything in this brilliant conversation, we've gone here, there, and everywhere, that we may have missed, in your opinion, Digby?
Probably.
We'll have to come back. We'll have to come back on each other's podcast.
Look, there's so much to talk about, but I'm a big believer in, like, actually, here's some nuggets of wisdom, folks, to listen to and to chew on. So why don't we leave it there?
Perfect.
And so, how do we find each other? How do people find you, Prina?
Yep. I'm on LinkedIn. Prina Shah is my name. I'd say that LinkedIn is my office and Instagram is my playground. So you'll probably see behind the scenes stuff there, and lots of food stuff, by the way. I like food. So yeah, if you want to get to know personal me, that's Instagram, prina.shah, LinkedIn, professional me. You'll see the professional version on there.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Otherwise, my website is prinashah.com. Easy as that. And Digby, how about yourself?
Well, pretty simple. DigbyScott.com is where you can see what I'm up to.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is, I like the way you say that's your kind of office. I would say that I blend the two, because a lot of my message is around life by design as well as lasting impact work. And so I'm pretty much sharing anything I'm up to, well, not everything, but all the good things that are helpful on LinkedIn. Yeah. So you can find me there, Digby Scott. And yeah, I tend not to do the Insta thing. I just tend to keep it simple. But,
love it.
Yeah, it works for me. Yeah, and I'll put a few things in the show notes from what I've been writing, and just picked up on here. So I've got this little article that could be useful around, forget time management, master these disciplines instead, which is all about energy management and intention management and attention management. So that could be a good little kind of framework for people as well. Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for entertaining my thoughts. It's been such a pleasure.
It's been great. See you soon.
All details about this episode are in the show notes. If you like this episode, I'd like you to take a moment and think about at least 2 people who might enjoy it. And please share the episode details with them too. Also, don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn. And on Instagram, I am prina.shah. See you there too.